Welcome everyone to VLAMP, video, lighting, audio, music, and photography how-to show. I'm of course your host, Matt Haslam, host and producer of VLAMP from MattHaslamProductions.com, and today we're sharing with you some of the behind-the-scenes footage of Season 30, Episode 1 of Amazing Race on CBS. Now, for those who don't know, Amazing Race is a wonderful show where basically 11 teams of 2 travel around the world and race to get to certain pit stops, do challenges along the way, and it's this incredible show which consistently wins Emmys on the logistics of how it's filmed. Because this show is so difficult to film, you're racing around the world having, 22 camera guys and audio technicians race around the world, and it's just this incredible logistical nightmare, which is fascinating to figure out how exactly it's done, and that's exactly why we went to New York City this past weekend to figure it out. They announced on Friday afternoon that they're going to be opening Season 30 in Washington Park in New York City on October 1st, which was a Sunday, and so basically you had 2 days to figure out how you're going to get to New York City, and my dad loves the show. He found out about it, and I love camera equipment, so I decided to go along and see exactly how they make this show. And I luckily was able to talk with not only the director of this show, but some of the camera guys to figure out how exactly this show is made. So as we're going through here, we're going to show you some of the footage that we captured in 4K and talk about exactly what you're seeing, why it's there, and talking about some of the logistical nightmares that they're facing at the moment in the footage. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so initially here, basically it's important to note that they were supposed to start at 11:30 in the morning. They actually brought this camera jib in around 11:25. None of their camera equipment started to come in until 11:25. This is about a 25 to 30 foot jib, and if you watch the opening to Amazing Race, you know there's a camera jib there. It's just one of those things that's pretty easy to spot of this is how this camera effect is made if you're in the production world. If you're not, you don't know how that movement was made. But coming from our company, we have a camera jib, and so it's only a 12-foot jib, and so it's pretty easy to spot that kind of motion. But this camera jib is about 20, I would say 25, maybe 30 feet long. It really was interesting to see exactly where they placed it on set, off to the right-hand side, and just to get like an overall view of the racers coming into the park. And later on in the footage, you're going to see some of the things where, they literally had the camera jib only like a foot from people's head and going above everyone, trying to get crowd shots. And what you're seeing now is they actually drew the Amazing Race 30 season logo on the ground with chalk. And that took hours before the production actually was there starting. And they had it all blocked off with barricades. But that was for the opening shots. Then you see Phil, the host, coming into the grounds of the park, and everyone kind of going crazy because he is the host of the show, and everyone that loves the show is there for him basically and loves him. And as you can see, there's production assistants on the bottom of your screen just walking around getting permission slips signed by everyone to allow them to be on camera. Quite interesting about that is that basically this is a public park, and so you're allowed to film in a public park. Basically they had these permits posted on all of the different entrance walkways to the park to let you know, hey, filming is in progress right now. If you enter these grounds, you're going to be on camera, or you give your permission up to be on camera. But yet they still had to go around and ask everyone to sign individual forms to ask them, do you allow CBS and Amazing Race to use your face and your likeness in this production? And it was interesting because this is basically a front and back form that you're signing, and they don't give you time to read it, and so you're basically signing your life away without even knowing what you're signing, which is really interesting that they have to do it in the first place, but really interesting that they don't give you the time to actually read it, or make it simple enough that you can just read one sentence and sign your name. But also then, as you see in the footage, they also were taking your picture with their cell phones, production assistants taking your picture with this cell phone of you and the form. That way they can identify the face with the certain person's name on the production form. So that was interesting to see. And as we go back to real time here, basically you see the crowd going around, and it's quite a big crowd at this point. This is, I would say, about noon, and they're supposed to start at 11:30, like I said. But they're just now starting to bring in the smaller cameras. And like I said, they had 30-some camera guys there. But they're just now starting to bring in the smaller cameras that will eventually be the cameras racing around the world. And these cameras were, if I can pull it up here, they were 4K cameras that they race around the world with. And here you can see Phil taking pictures with all the little kids. He didn't really take pictures with any of the adults of the audience, but that's kind of what you get in a celebrity type situation. So yeah, the cameras they were using were Sony compact 4K XD cams with a super 35 millimeter sensor, or CMOS sensor, and they're priced. If you go to B&H, literally we went to B&H right after this, and they're priced about $12,000 per camera. So what they're actually doing is they're recording everything for this show in 4K resolution, even though they're only delivering to CBS in full HD 1920 by 1080. And it was really interesting to figure out, they had plenty of cameras rolling around. So 20-some cameras with 30-some camera guys and audio technicians. And they're recording everything for this thing in 4K. Even the camera on the jib was a Sony XD cam, which was 4K. They had a couple cameras with huge lenses on them to get really far away. In the footage right now, you're seeing on top of the building behind the Washington Park Monument there, they actually have a camera on top of that roof looking down to get an almost aerial view of the entire park. They also had a camera on a helicopter roaming around the entire time just to see an aerial view. And as Phil alluded to earlier, later on after the whole thing was over, in an interview with the local news up there, the helicopter is going to be following the teams as they race to get to the airport. I'm thinking JFK Airport up there because they were going to Iceland, which was their first destination for the first leg of the race. But it was really interesting to see how they were recording, what kind of cameras they were using. Most of their cameras were Sony cameras with Canon glass on them, which, if you're not aware, glass is their lenses on the camera. So they were combining Sony and Canon equipment, but Canon does have amazing glass on in their lines, and so I'm not surprised to see cinema grade Canon glass on the cameras. I was surprised to see a little bit of Sony equipment because in theory you'd be using Canon with Canon, but they were using Sony equipment with Canon lenses. But as you can see right now in the footage, I'm going to go back real time here. They're bringing in the Steadicam, which was a professional Steadicam worth right around $10,000 or so, to get one of their Sony cams on that steady mount just so they can move around however they want. And they're bringing in the taco cart, which is for the Steadicam itself. That way the Steadicam operator can rest the Steadicam, which is roughly about 100 pounds on him. So it's really heavy, and but it makes for a very smooth move. But it does require a taco cart where you can rest the Steadicam as much as possible when you're not shooting. It was interesting throughout the day to see the Steadicam operator talking to the host and the executive producer and the director almost on a constant basis, trying to figure out what kind of shots they want next and exactly what the next process is in the whole thing. There you can see Phil going around with some of the former stars of, I should say current stars, but they're former contestants on the show, where every former contestant's invited onto the new openings. That way they're in the audience. And as you can see, the contestants are all running in. These are the contestants for the current season, season 30. They were all running in, and they were just getting a shot of everyone coming in. As you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a jib up there roaming around. And you have random handheld camera guys roaming around with their cameras and their audio technicians. And what's interesting about that is basically because the handheld cameras had an audio technician, which isn't basically, the audio technician isn't controlling the audio, by the way. They're only controlling where the boom mic is actually placed on the pole. And so they're controlling where the shotgun mic is placed. But on both of the contestants, you have wireless lavalier mics on their person. And later on in the footage, you're going to see them right before the race actually begins. They're going to open up those packs and basically lift up their shirts a little bit, and the packs are actually on like a belt pack on their stomachs, where the audio technicians are going to turn them on. And right now you're seeing the whole cast kind of come together, and the executive producers, who I'm going to call EPs from now on just to make it simpler, the EP talking to everyone, telling them what's going to happen over the next couple hours, and them lining up their next shots in the whole process. Like I said, this whole process took about 5 hours to do, and it's going to be really interesting to figure out how they edit everything down. And the contestants are walking out again because they're going to reshoot this a couple more times before the day is over, everyone running in. And then what they'll do is, as you're going to see in the footage, they're going to run in individually as a team, and the Steadicam operator is going to be following them through the crowd as they run through. And for those who don't know, they had barricades up all the way around the entire fountain here, from the monument there, that little arch that they have in Washington Park. They had barricades up all the way from there, circling around the fountain to about a quarter way around the fountain that you're seeing now, and then no barricades in front of where we were, because they wanted to have the cameras get the best shots. Now, to hold back the audience, as you're going to see in the footage there, they keep asking the audience to stay back a little bit, but they don't. The audience doesn't really listen at all, and so they should have had barricades there, but I guess it was because they didn't want to ruin the shots. And as you're seeing again, I'm going to go back to the microphone situation, where basically on every camera, as you're going to see later in the footage, they had the wireless lavalier mics hooked up to like wireless receivers on the cameras, and everything's being recorded directly into the camera. And so now you have 3 channels of audio, one from each contestant's wireless lavalier mic, and one from the shotgun mic that the audio technician is holding on a boom pole. And so you have 3 channels of audio coming in, and the video, which is 4K resolution. And what was really interesting is later on, after the almost towards the end of the entire production, the filming, before the racers actually all left, there was a camera guy positioned directly in front of me, and like as you're seeing right now in the footage, actually. But basically, there was a camera guy stationed right in front of me, and so I started asking him some questions. And it's really interesting because for as high quality as the video that they're recording, I imagined, it's taking tons and tons of footage to make this show, and it's one of the biggest nightmares of editing, trying to figure out how to edit down all this footage into, a 42-minute video, basically, because you have commercials in that hour-long program. And so it was really interesting to figure out how they back up their footage. They don't really do that, where basically you only have one camera racing around with a team, and if you lose footage from that camera, you don't have footage from that leg of the race with that one team. And so it's vital that that footage is backed up, and it's reliable to have it's imperative that you have a reliable camera to get that footage and preserve it. But what's interesting is there you can see the jib flying over everyone basically, and getting some shots of the teams coming in, and it was basically the teams coming in was recorded on multiple cameras just so they got multiple angles of it. But as you're going to probably see in the opening of season 30, they actually edit out most of the footage with other camera guys in the shots. So it'd be really interesting to figure out how exactly they do that with the helicopter, the rooftop, and the jib shot, because camera guys were all over the place down there on the ground. But yeah, they're actually recording everything in 4K, and then they're not. I asked the camera guy, like, how often do you guys back up this footage? Like, what do you have? Like, in your camera, you have, in theory, 2 P2 cards, or huge P2 cards, I should mention, in the camera, just to like have a dual backup of everything just in case one fails. But how often do you guys actually copy the footage? Is it wirelessly transmitted to satellites and that's how it's all backed up to like a CBS server somewhere? Or is it just backed up every leg of the race after you hit a pit stop? Do you stop and copy all the footage? What was interesting to figure out is, because the camera guys said, well, no, we don't back up our footage at all. We just wait until 2 or 3 legs go by, and then we copy the footage onto a hard drive at the hotel or wherever we're staying at that day. And so every 2 to 3 lengths, which is, by the way, it could be, 2-3 days, but it could also be up to a week that they're not copying this footage. And, you're recording things all week long. You're recording things 24/7 almost. And so, and by the way, this race is only 21 days long. And so you're literally filming everything you possibly can when you're a camera guy on the road. And so it's really interesting to figure out that they have all this footage and they're not backing it up, besides every 2 to 3 lengths of the legs of the game. So it would scare me not having this footage backed up, but I guess to CBS, they are dealing with a whole lot more reliable equipment because they're spending millions on this equipment. And by the way, all their cameras are rented for the day, and that's the jib going over everyone, getting some crowd shots. But and they're going to cut that together with when Phil is talking in front of everyone and saying, this is Phil talking, by the way, and welcoming everyone, and then he does his little script. And it was interesting to figure out, like, during the day, he's actually marking down on the script, like, let's cut this line, let's say this instead. And then you're going to see it cut with crowd shots from the jib and from the rooftop camera, probably, of people kind of, clapping or, yelling in response to, air quotes, what he said, even though it's not actually what he said, not actually at the same time. But here he is basically saying, with the steady cam right in front of him and the jib above him, getting crowd shots, he's basically doing the opening lines and the opening script to the show, and saying, "Are you guys ready to see the contestants?" And I'll leave some of this footage in another video. I'll leave all this footage in another video where you can actually hear the audio for everything. But this is where he's welcoming everyone, and what's interesting is he actually goes through this script a couple times, says it a couple different ways, and I take it the editors will be able to decide, okay, this part of this line, this part of this take, and bring them all together in post, which is a daunting task. I know as an editor that's a daunting task, but CBS has the budget for it. So this is where all the racers came in, and as you can see, they're all in different colors to basically help the viewers at home and help the audience there separate the teams and say the pink team is separate from the yellow team. And even though like the producers of the show know it's different teams, you don't necessarily know that at home, and it's easier to remember, oh, this team was in yellow, this team was in green. So what you're going to see throughout the race in like season 1, apparently they didn't do this, but as the seasons went on, and now we're at season 30, they started to keep the teams in certain colors all throughout the entire day, or all throughout the entire race. And then you can see Phil talking to some of his associate producers and his makeup artists and stuff like that. It was interesting to see, like, Phil kept on getting makeup throughout the day because he kept on sweating, because it was not necessarily hugely hot, but it was kind of hot. So it was I shouldn't say it's surprising to see he has a makeup artist, but because it is TV. But when you're racing around the world, you kind of don't expect to have a makeup artist on the road with you. But also, like, this is the opening shot again, and they're just showing it from a wider angle now. And so, again, he's saying the same exact thing to the script that's only a couple sentences long, but now it's from a wider angle. And so even though that Steadicam has... It's interesting because it's the same camera, it's the same Steadicam, but now it's only a couple feet back, and now they're showing it from a different angle. And so it's interesting that even on a multi-million-dollar budget like they have, they even fake camera shots, where in the small, frugal industry of filmmaking, we're taught, if you only have one camera, shoot everything twice and fake multicam production, right? And do this fake multicam effect. But even they, with this multi-million-dollar budget and 20-some cameras rolling around, they're faking it. And they're faking this intro of, let's do it 5-6 times, and let's do it from different angles, and that way it's a whole lot better. And as you can see later on in the footage, where the Steadicam is actually behind Phil, looking at where we are positioned on top of some benches that were there, which was actually a really good spot because we can actually get our cameras over everyone else that's standing there in the way. But it was interesting because, like, they were cutting that, I guess, together where basically he had a camera behind him looking at us where we were positioned. He didn't even remotely say the same thing as he says basically the first 2 times. And so, if you realize in, like, a lot of TV anymore, they're actually editing things with that angle behind the actor or behind the main star, and you can see the footage of, Phil moving his shoulder or, moving his head as if he's talking, and he really is talking, but right now he's motioning that, let's welcome the racers in, and the Steadicam's behind him, and, getting this crowd reaction of everyone coming in, but no one's actually coming in. And he's just motioning it. And now they're holding a flag to kind of light his back a little bit more for the camera to see the back of his shirt a little bit better. But by the way, that's called a flag if you're not aware. I should probably note that. It's basically a big frame with a curtain in it that shows that bounces light from the sun down onto whatever the subject is. And here he is doing it again, where he's motioning towards this, completely empty little area where everyone's supposed to be coming in at, and they're going to edit that together with the actual racers coming in. And then you have Phil talking to all the contestants individually. And like I said, all of this is going to be edited into like a 5-minute segment, and so you can fake camera angles. You can shoot things 5 times, say them differently, and with camera behind Phil, you can show his shoulder moving a little bit and, put any audio you want in there of him talking, and it makes it seem as if he said the same thing 5 times, even though he didn't. It was very far from that. And now the actual individual racers, this is the camera. I'm going to pause on this for just a second. This camera was in front of me for quite a bit of time because they wanted to show a camera angle of Phil looking at the audience in front of him, opening the whole show. And the only real way to show the audience being there was to get a camera guy in the middle of the audience. And this is one of the camera guys that races around the world with one of the teams. He's been on the show for a number of years, and he's a great camera guy because, CBS does not choose bad camera guys. I'm sure they vet all their camera guys quite heavily, and then they vet them even higher for a show like this where you only have one camera per team, and if you mess up the footage, it's not there. They don't have footage then. And so it was interesting to see, the level of talent of these camera guys. But as he stopped in front of us, we were able to see, and by the way, that's why they shoot in 4K resolution. That way they can literally, if they're running down the street after a cab or whatever happens on this race, they have everything in 4K, so they can literally choose the framing they want later. And they kind of teach their camera guys to shoot wide, to film everything in a little bit wider angle than you would normally have it. And that way they can stabilize the footage later. They can choose the framing they want on the subjects later. They just want it on camera in general. And that's why they film everything in 4K, even though it is a footage nightmare because you only back things up every 2 to 3 legs. But as you can see on the back of this camera, they're using the same exact batteries on every camera. Every camera is exactly the same. So that way, if one team's camera goes down, they can say, hey, to another camera guy, hey, can I borrow one of your extra batteries today? And that way, you never have a camera go down. And on the back of this camera, you can see the wireless packs there, which connect to the wireless lavalier microphones on everyone's chest. And those chest microphones are mounted underneath the clothing, and that way, you're not seeing them on camera. And the packs are actually mounted on like a little elastic belt around them, which is skin colored, and that way it's underneath their shirts and stuff like that, and you're not seeing the packs at all either. Also on this camera, interestingly, like I said, it's a Sony camera, XD HD cam, and then you have a Canon glass on it. You also have a shotgun microphone on it, which is recording another channel of audio just for the ambient audio of the situation. You also have normally a cable running out of the back of these cameras, which is an XLR cable, to the boom pole, which is the audio technician's pole for the entire duration of the race. But on the front of this, it's interesting because they have a light on the front of their cameras for when they're basically shooting in early mornings or late nights. They need to have light on them at all times, and they're not using any like clamps to mount these things because you have to understand these cameras are going to go around the world with everyone, and so they have their individual straps on them. These are specially designed cameras just for this, so you can see the attention to detail that they've gone to make these cameras perfect for this situation. And the straps mounted right on them, and that way when they're getting on and off a plane, they don't have to, because they're sometimes filming on a plane as the team is getting ready to get off the plane, and so they don't want to have these camera bags with their camera operators all the time. They don't want to have any of that, and so they put padding around their camera so no one can, anyone around the world can't just come up to the camera while the camera guy's filming and touch a couple buttons and mess everything up. They want to have those protected, and so you see some padding on it, not only to protect the camera from getting dings and scrapes, which they don't seem to care about on this production. They don't really care because they have a multi-million-dollar budget, so replacing a camera is basically nothing to them, as long as the footage survives. But so if at the end of the race this camera's a piece of crap, they don't care. There's a reason why they're renting all their cameras, right? But they have this padding to protect the cameras, and that way they don't need a camera bag. They have a strap on it, so they don't need a camera bag, and their camera guys can, put it on their shoulder and, run as fast as they need to during the entire race. They have pieces of metal mounting the front light, which is called an eye light, onto the camera. And it's sort of like the same light you see in news a lot of times, but on this light, it's actually a dual light where you have 2 different color temperatures on it, and then there's a little LED panel on the back of it of, this is how much brightness is coming out of this color temperature, this is how much is coming out of this color temperature, and it's all battery powered. And everything on this camera, by the way, between the wireless packs, the camera itself, the light on the front of this, everything there is being powered by those big battery packs in the back. And that way they're not having to put extra batteries on the key light, on the eye light in the front of this camera. It's all powered by one camera battery. And that way, if they need extra power, they can just replace that battery. And they don't have to worry about individual batteries all over the place on this camera. It's a very efficient system to have if you're going to be racing around the world, by the way. This is very well thought out by some of the top camera guys in the country, and by the team of, the 12 camera guys they're going to have racing around the world. By the way, I say 12, there's 11 teams, one camera guy, and they have just for the host, and the host is the last out of every city and the first into every city, and he has to introduce every city and every challenge to everyone. So you have actually 12 camera guys racing around the world and 12 audio technicians as well. The only one with a tripod is the host camera guy. So everyone else, they're out of luck on tripods. They don't have any. They have to do everything handheld. But like I said, on the front of this thing, you see this metal rod on the top of it connecting the camera handle to the top of the light. That way they're not mounting that to the actual glass of the camera, the lens of the camera. And then on top of that, it's really interesting, is they have two little filters, which are ND filters, actually for the light, that are on Velcro, that basically the camera guy at any time he needs to, rather than turning the dial on the back of the light, he can just flip one of those down and diffuse the light a little bit. He can just bring one of those ND filters down, and now suddenly, if he's shooting in the sun, he can put one of those over the glass of the camera, and it's a really easy fix and a really efficient system to go, okay, if basically this is for when they're going from inside a building during a challenge to racing outside and going to get a cab or whatever they're doing, he can just really quickly flip one of those ND filters down in front of the glass, and now all of a sudden they're shooting outside. And the reason why they do this is because normally in a video production, you would have time to adjust your settings from inside to outside. But on these productions, the teams are racing as fast as they can, and the camera guys just have to keep up and get the shots. And so they don't have time to adjust their settings. They just have to. They have this really wide aperture on their camera when they're inside, and that way they're bringing in lots of light to the camera lens and the sensor of the camera, and that way they're actually capturing the image. But then when they race outside, suddenly everything's like pure white to the camera, where you have this huge aperture on the camera lens, and you're bringing in lots of light, and then you go outside and everything looks white. Everything's just hugely overexposed. And so an ND filter helps your camera lens. Basically, it's a sunglasses for your camera, where you're going outside and now you have this little piece of sunglasses on the front of your lens, so it can see everything a little bit darker. And I'm going to continue with actual video here, but it was really interesting to see everything on these cameras is exactly the same. They're all color-coded just for the different teams, and that way one camera guy isn't picking up the wrong camera one day, and that way they're not mixing up footage. But there's plenty of footage of this camera right in front of me. It was really interesting. This is actually where I spoke to the camera guy and figured out how often they introduce, upload the footage to their server. They don't have a server. They just have hard drives that go along with them around the world. And so you literally have one DIT, digital imaging technician, going with them to every city, but he only goes to the hotels. So he doesn't go around with them to all the different challenges. This is him basically getting shots of Phil looking at the audience and the Steadicam behind them and talking with everyone of this is the opening lines of the show again, and introducing the individual teams. By the way, again, all this footage with its audio is going to be uploaded separately, and that way you can actually hear who all the teams are. If you're one of the crazy people like my dad and does the little contests before the race actually begins of who you think is going to win in first, second, third, and to 11th place. It's basically this fantasy league only for Amazing Race, and no money involved in it. But if you're one of those people that like to be a part of one of those challenges, you can listen to the audio from Phil introducing all the teams and talking about their experiences. There was lifeguards who saved 1,500 lives. There was race car drivers who just won Indianapolis 500. There was 2 hot dog eating contest winners, Big Brother stars. The list goes on and on, 11 teams. But this is him introducing all of the different teams to the audience and to the show. So as we go on here, we're going to be talking about, basically, this is before the actual race began. That, again, everything you're seeing here was shot like 5 times, introducing the teams, introducing the show to the audience. Everything was shot 5 times, at least. And that's one of the things one of the stars from former contestants of the show said to everyone as we got started. Like, this is the moment where they have everyone, and they just take a moment to, this is the only chance they have to film everyone, so they're going to film everything 5 times. Be aware of that. This is going to take a while, No one really expected this to take more than like an hour or two, and it ended up taking 5 hours. So that was really interesting. And I think it surprised a lot of people how long TV takes to make. And even me, because I'm used to live events and stuff where you only have one take of everything. They had signage all over the place for this thing. Amazing Race Season 30, their logos everywhere around this park during that day. It was actually interesting to see how big of a production this was and how big of a budget they had behind them to do this. And surprisingly, they only had like 1 or 2 cops, as you can see off to the left-hand side of the screen right now. The guy in the jean jacket and the red Ferrari hat, he's one of the EPs of the show. He's produced plenty of other shows back in the day, game shows and stuff, and now he's producing this show. He's an amazing guy. He talked to the audience a little bit, but it was surprising to see, for the stars they had there and for the big production they had with, at least a couple $100,000 of equipment, if not plenty more than that, a couple million. It was really interesting to not see that much security. There was only 1 or 2 cops stationed there, but it's not one of those TV shows where everyone's rowdy. This is a TV show where everyone there is a diehard fan of the show and wants it to continue. And so, you had 1 or 2 cops there just in case, but it really didn't feel like you were in any danger, even though there was only a couple cops. And I don't think I would have, minded if a couple more cops were there, but I don't think I would have minded if they weren't there either. I didn't mind that they weren't there. This is one of the crowds where you just feel safe in, and because of the show, because everyone's there for the love of the show, they're not there to interrupt it. Interestingly, on the same night, this is in New York, in the same night, you have the Vegas incident where it was the biggest mass shooting in American history so far. And, we were incredibly lucky because we were in a crowd of people, and there's plenty of big buildings around. So it was scary once you got home and you figured out what happened the same day in Vegas, but it wasn't scary there. I genuinely don't know if on the rooftop, along with the camera guy that's up there, I don't know if they had a cop station there looking out. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see if that actually did happen, just because of the world we live in nowadays. But they had plenty of cameras to capture everything, and this is Phil saying, ready, set, go to the racers. In front of us, by the way, in front of this little crowd that's in front of me, all the bags were there for the racers. And what was interesting is because a little bit later on in the footage, you're going to see them bringing out the little belt packs that everyone gets with Amazing Race logo on them. It would have been really interesting to get one of them somehow from like a merchandise store that they had off to the side. There was no like merch booth off to the side, by the way, but basically, all the bags were in front of us, and so they kept on telling us, the races are going to race over to you later on, and so you have to back up. They kept on backing everyone up, but with no barricades. We kept on like complaining that they didn't have any barricades, but then again, they had to get the shots, and the shots are more important than barricades sitting in the middle of the audience there. So, Phil a couple times said, get ready, get set, go kind of thing to the cameras, but he was doing it for the camera. And as you can see, the Steadicam's in front of the racers right now and just getting him looking at the racers. And so they're going to edit that next to footage of the racers actually hearing go from a back angle of Phil and the racers running towards Phil and through Phil towards the backpacks. Interestingly, as we began the day there, my dad, who's a diehard fan, said, I bet you that in the middle of the fountain is going to be their next clue for wherever they're going to go next, And the production assistants, the PAs, kept on telling us, the bags are going to be placed right in front of you, and they're going to be racing towards you to get their bags to go on this race. But then basically they surprised everyone with, when Phil said right before they actually went, they said, your bags are here. The clue is actually in the middle of the fountain, and you have to get both before you head out. So the racers actually ran towards the bags and ran into the fountain. It was their choice of where they were going to go first, and that's him looking at the racers and the camera capturing that angle. And as you can tell right now, only one of the actual individual handheld cameramen are looking and getting a shot of his back. All the other camera guys were stationed off to the side, as you can see in this footage right here. They're just waiting off to the sidelines, waiting for the moment where they're going to race around the world too. So as difficult as it is for the racers themselves, you have to understand everything the racers do, the camera guys have to do with a 30 to 50 pound camera on their shoulder, This is them actually getting ready to go racing. All the camera guys are getting positioned. All the audio guys are getting positioned. And as you're going to see in just a couple seconds here, when they say go, the camera guys are absolutely going nuts filming their teams. This is them taking the group photo with the executive producers and the host. This is the photo you're going to see online for the next couple months of advertising the show. This is the main photo they're taking right now with CBS photographers. There were, I think, 3 CBS photographers there photographing the entire day as well. And also local news filming it for a local, not ABC, CBS local affiliate up in New York. That's all the bags stationed on the ground, and they're just now going to get all their little packs, and that's the helicopter flying around. That wasn't flying around all day. It was filming a couple scenes in the very beginning of the day as the race, before any of the other camera guys got there, and supposedly Phil was in one helicopter, and the other helicopter was filming him saying something up in the air above Washington Park, which is probably captured by a lavalier microphone on Phil and captured to the camera in the other helicopter. And that was flying around for quite a bit of time, like 20 minutes up in the air, before everything else got started on the ground. And then, they went away, and all of a sudden, like half an hour later, you saw Phil actually coming out, and it was more than likely, okay, they went to land somewhere, obviously, and he had to get to Washington Park in person. So then this part of the day, I'm just going to back it up a little bit here just to see what I was talking about. But so the helicopter was flying around, and then the helicopter went away for a little bit, and then it didn't come back until the very end of the day, where they had the opening, actually where Phil was going to say, go, and everyone raced around the world, Until that moment, the helicopter didn't come into sight again, and that was because the helicopter can't stay up for 4 or 5 hours just waiting for things to happen. It came in at the very end to film the racers actually leaving the park and racing towards cabs or however they were going to get to the airport, because it was their own decision this season of how they got transportation to the airport. Some seasons you see where they had special cars marked or special transportation marked with the Amazing Race flag. This season, it was all up to them how they got to the JFK airport or whatever airport they were going to. So probably JFK. And as we get going here with the footage again, the Steadicam flipped upside down, and now the camera's on the ground, and the monitor is actually in the air with the weights that balance the camera. And they're getting a low angle of the bags looking at the racers. And so on the bottom of your screen, you're going to see bags, and then at the top of the screen, you're going to see all the racers in the background. That shot came from this angle right here. Steadicams are unbelievable like that, where you can actually flip the Steadicam upside down and get really low angles and still just as steady of a shot. Again, his camera is being powered by the same batteries everything else is, and so they can just switch out all day long, and you're going to see that. The guy next to him, by the way, is a follow focus guy who's pulling focus, making sure everything on that Steadicam is in focus. And he has the little monitor in his hands to see exactly what the camera is seeing. And it's a wireless monitor seeing everything. That basically the Steadicam operator is looking down at his monitor, and the follow focus guy is looking at his monitor, making sure it's in focus. And so that way the Steadicam operator can just keep the shot steady and doesn't have to worry about the focus of the camera. This is the actual start of the race where they're actually going to get going. So as we're watching here, I hope you like my commentary, but this is Phil telling all the racers, this is actually it. This is the moment where if I say go, you're going to go. And this is the Steadicam kind of getting one more angle before everything gets started of, he's giving his speech again. This is probably the 6th or 7th time he said the same exact couple sentences, and just a little bit different way that they're going to edit later, just to show this angle of the bags looking up at the contestants. So, like I said, most of these shots that are taking 20, 30 minutes to set up are going to end up being like maybe 15 seconds in the end video. And then the executive producer comes over multiple times to stop everything, to aim up another shot or something, and get everything absolutely perfect before this thing actually goes underway. The EP doesn't go with them around the world. He just was there because he actually lives in New York, and it was the opening of the show. So they're just capturing that one more time. Apparently, some of the audience in the background, as they were also directing the audience as well all day long, but some of the audience were just out of place in the background, and they wanted to move them. That way they can get the shot again. But as you can see, the camera jib has moved around quite a bit throughout the day. Really, moving that camera jib around must be the most difficult thing in a crowd like this, because they kept on having production assistants telling people, hey, this camera jib is going to hit you in the head, and it's not a lightweight thing to hit you in the head with, so you probably don't want to stand here. And this is them actually racing. That was the actual go. Some of them raced into the fountain to get the clue. Some of them raced towards their bags to grab their bags and get ready to go. Now the camera guys come out and they start filming everything possible. This is where everything goes crazy moment. Basically, it goes from let's take 5 takes of this entire thing to now we got it going and we only have 1 take of everything. So you have individual teams going off to different sides, reading their clue. Something a lot of teams don't do is read their entire clue very carefully, and see throughout the day you saw a lot of fans showing little signs in their hands of read your clue this time. And then you have camera guys trying to get the audience more excited in the background to kind of get more peppy, and then you have steady camera operator and teams already leaving and some teams waiting around doing little things to the camera just for the show. And what you just saw there was like 12 cameras, or no, actually, like because of the helicopter and the rooftop camera, the jib, the Steadicam, you have literally 20 some cameras capturing this, and what you just saw, that last like 30 seconds, will end up being about 30 seconds in the end video, in the actual episode. So it was amazing because 30 seconds is actually 30 seconds in this show, and sometimes even shorter. And so that opening was so short, but yet it was it's a ton of footage for them to go through. And by the way, they synchronize everything with time code, and that way all of their cameras are recording. And this is Phil giving an interview to the local news affiliate up there for CBS. And then off to your right-hand side, you see two more cameras. By the way, the two cameras off to your right-hand side of the screen are from another company filming something for another news affiliate. And they were Canon C200s filming 4K footage, of course. But, it was, again, interesting to see all of these different cameras there that day filming everything in the best quality they can get. This is a standard news camera. I believe it's a Hitachi or a Sony camera. It's just recording to standard P2 cards for the news. But then off to your right-hand side, you see Canon C200s filming for whatever news affiliate that was. I do not know the actual news affiliates these were for. So if you're watching the news on Sunday or Monday, you probably saw some of the footage from those cameras. But he talks a lot about thank you to the fans for making the show what it is, because not every show has the fan base that Amazing Race does. And, really without the fans, CBS would not put the money behind this show. CBS puts money behind a lot of shows that don't have the fan base Amazing Race does, because it's a lot easier to produce, such as shows like Survivor, where it's on an island and you literally control the entire island. And so even though filming a show like that is difficult, by no means easy, but they have a very similar, if not bigger, budget than Amazing Race, and they have controlled the entire situation at all times. They control an island for a month, whereas Amazing Race films around the world, and they're literally racing around the world, and there is no telling what will happen. And interestingly, if we found out also that whenever they stop and whenever a team stops and asks directions from someone, they actually have to stop, get their camera guy to have that person sign a permission form to allow them to be on camera for CBS and stuff. And it's interesting because you think, oh, there's a camera guy there, there's an audio technician, it's a team, they're racing around the world, they don't have time to stop there to get signed permission from everyone that's getting asked for directions. And so that's why a lot of teams just go on and don't ask for directions. They go on and just try to find a map somewhere and pick it up and do it all on their own instead of asking for directions, because it takes on camera, you might actually see it in the show where they're asking for the directions and it might take 30 seconds, but until they stop, they put down the camera for a second, grab the permission form, get them to sign the form, explain to them that this is part of the CBS production. It takes much longer than what you actually see on camera in the actual episode. And so teams rarely stop to ask for directions because of that one rule, where everyone has to sign a permission form. And you think to yourself, can't they just ask the person on camera, hey, is it all right if we film you? And them saying yes, but and that would be okay in America, but you're dealing with a lot of different countries here, and so having signed permission is always, always better. And for a production like this where they have an ample budget, why not? So that was our coverage of the entire event. Like I said, it took about 5 hours for them to film this entire thing. What will end up being 3 to 5 minutes in the end video, in the end episode. But I hope you guys enjoyed the behind-the-scenes look at what happened and my commentary as we went through. Like I said, I'm going to be uploading all of the footage in 4K resolution with the audio from the camera that day, and that way you can hear Phil introducing all the teams. It won't be as high quality as CBS has on their audio recordings, because they had a microphone literally on him. And they had a shotgun mic on him, and they also had a lavalier microphone on his chest. But it's still good enough audio so you can hear it. I'm going to be uploading that separately so you can see that, and that's going to be on the Matt Haslam Productions YouTube channel. And I hope you enjoyed my commentary. I hope you enjoyed a behind-the-scenes look at one of my favorite shows, one of the most insane logistical nightmares in the world of a show to make. Amazing Race is It's so difficult. It wins Emmys all the time for its logistics, and I hope you guys enjoyed a behind-the-scenes look into that show. I would like to say and end here that it was an incredible day overall, seeing how this multi-million-dollar show was made. And even though we only saw a small glimpse of it in, a day of this 21-day race, it was that glimpse that, gives me that little bit of hope of like, hey, I can be that camera guy one day racing around the world. And also it gives you a little bit of inspiration of how you can film your productions. If you had a 7 or 8 figure budget for your show, I'm just saying it'd be a whole lot easier to make shows then. But if you enjoyed the behind the scenes look, go check out some of the other footage with the actual audio in it. Also, go over to our website, which is mhnews.info, or you can go to madhousenproductions.com/blog, and there's a button there to help support the show. You can hit donate any amount, and help us make this show possible. We're always relying on our fans. We love our fans as well as Amazing Race loves its fans. We love you guys for supporting us. We just surpassed 100 subscribers, so I'm really happy about that. I know that's not a lot in YouTube terms, but hey, it's something. It's an accomplishment. So I'm going to take it. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and sharing this video, because it was a really enjoyable day being with not only enjoyable because I was with my dad all day, but enjoyable because I got to see a whole bunch of equipment and really see how bigger productions are made without running cables to every single camera and back to a big production truck. That's probably the most annoying part of my job, where you have to literally run cables everywhere. And this production, that wasn't a thing because they're recording everything internally to the cameras. So it was interesting, and I hope you guys enjoy the behind the scenes look. And for those who don't know, I don't know when Amazing Race Season 30 will be premiering. I have no idea, and when it does premiere, we're going to be sharing this video again. But it was a really fun day overall, and I highly suggest if a TV show comes near you that you should definitely go and check out that TV show and how it's made, because it's really, I learned way more in this 5-6 hour span seeing Amazing Race being made than I learned probably my entire college career and my entire college years. And so go out there, see a television show being made, and really just enjoy your life. And this is a day where I really enjoyed it. So anyway, thanks for joining us today, and see us back here next time every single Monday for a brand new episode at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every single day at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is a brand new video coming out with us. And also every single month, the first Monday of every month is a brand new live stream coming to you live from the MHP studios here in Minersville, PA, where we answer all of your questions from the previous month and all of the questions that you send in to us during the actual live stream. So if you're interested in asking us any questions, join us for that monthly live stream and comment those questions during the live stream, and we will answer them live. So have a great day, everyone, and see us next time. Bye for now.